Well, good evening, Chicago. Welcome to All Hands on Deck. I'm Pastor Ira Acree. I am your host, and we look forward to having a great time. I'm the pastor of one of the local churches in Chicago, Greater St. John Bible Church, but I also am the CEO of the GSJ Family Life Center. It is our desire to bring a family life center to the Austin community. Why don't you give me a call sometimes at 773-378-3300 and hear the vision we have for the Great West Side. Why don't you like us at facebook.com/REVIRAACREE. Well, tonight we have as our special guest one of the many citizens in Chicago that's fighting for a seat in Chicago City Council. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bob Galhotra.
Thank you, Pastor Acree. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
We're excited to have you on tonight. You should feel pretty good. You were endorsed as the candidate for the 29th Ward Aldermanic seat. How do you feel about that endorsement?
It's a good feeling. I'm still waiting for the Tribune's endorsement. I'm not sure who they're going to endorse. I went before the Chicago Defenders editorial board, but I don't believe they issued any endorsements. They did mention who all the candidates were. So, I'm excited about the Sun-Times endorsement. I don't think I'd be here. I don't think you would have invited me.
That's why you're here tonight, yes. Because so it's a big story. It's a big story because the incumbent, most of the time, these newspapers go with the incumbent. And anybody that has an independent voice, I've noticed that they've been going the other route, seeing them as a rabble-rouser or something like that. Tell me, what makes you the right guy to get a seat in that council for the 29th Ward?
Well, it's a very interesting ward now from the remap. I've lived in the ward collectively for over 25 years now. I grew up in the Austin neighborhood. I used to live on Massasoit, the 800 block.
That's in my neighborhood.
That is your neighborhood,
yeah.
Yes.
I used to live on Massasoit, 1100 block. But go ahead.
Just a few blocks away.
Yeah.
And, I went to Chicago Public School down the street on Central at Iowa, at Byford. That school, of course, has been replaced by Brunson. Yeah. And after I went to college and went to law school and became an attorney, I settled in the Galewood neighborhood. I've lived there for over 20 years. I moved there in 1993. So altogether, I have a very good understanding of the neighborhood and the entire ward and all the people that live in the ward. I've done a lot of door-to-door,
Sure.
a lot of door knocking since May of last year throughout the entire ward from Roosevelt Road all the way up onto Roscoe. And, I've gotten to know and talk to the people, gotten to know about the issues, and there are some very, very important issues that are facing the ward. And, my career as a public defender for the last 25 years, has put me on the front lines of issues that affect the people of the ward.
And some of those issues that affect people in that ward are?
Well, poverty, unemployment, lack of housing, drug addiction, lack of mental health resources. So, there are, many multifaceted issues that affect the community. And then, it's just basic stuff, too. It's basic city services, Can I get my garbage can? Why does it take so long to get a garbage container? I had knocked on a door and talked to the young lady who lived there and, exchanged pleasantries with her, told her a little bit about myself. And as I was walking away, her husband came running after me.
Wow.
And Pastor, what he was telling me when he was running after me? He said he wanted to support me because he was tired of the incumbent, because when he asked for a garbage can, they gave him the runaround, and finally they came out, and what they did was they took a neighbor's garbage receptacle and brought it over to his and said, "Here's your garbage can." He said, I could have done that. I don't need these people to do that. But it's just basic services that folks aren't getting.
Gotcha. We got a caller waiting on the line. Caller, what's your name, and welcome to All Hands.
My name is Joe. What's going to make you any different when we had past aldermen, when it comes to the Inspector General's office, where they have reduced the budget, reduced the staff size and reduce the power in terms of what the Inspector General could do in terms of stamping out corruption. And when I'm talking about corruption, I'm talking about misappropriation of funds and ethical violations as well.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. You know, yesterday I was at a candidate forum, and all the candidates were asked, what ordinance would you want to introduce? And the ordinance I would want to introduce would be to beef up Joe Ferguson and the Inspector General's office. The Legislative Inspector General's office, you know, they got their hands tied too. I don't think we need both of them, but we need one of them to function properly. Joe Ferguson has been there a longer period of time, and we need to enact legislation in the City Council that beefs up their ability to go after corrupt politicians and weed out the corruption in this town.
Let me ask you, why must Deborah Graham go?
Well, she's just not responsive to the needs of the community. You know, it's like a deaf ear on what's going on. And also because there's really no discussion, there's no debate, there's no consideration, there's no exchange of ideas. It's basically a yes, sir, when it comes to what the mayor wants to do. And, you know, the voting record obviously is a great example.
So it's not like that she's sitting back with her personal vision for the community, nor is she listening to the advice of the residents, but she's basically just saying yes, sir, to whatever the mayor wants.
Well, that's a very good way of describing the current situation in the 29th Ward and the lack of leadership that we have, yes.
How do you feel about the aldermen voting 100% with the mayor?
You know, I was a young student during the council wars years.
Sure.
Okay, so I remember the Verdoliak 29 or 27 or whatever it was. And
29.
Incidentally 29 as well.
Yeah.
And I remember that there was a lot of chaos, and it took a while to work through that. So no, we don't need anything like that. Mm-hmm. But what we do need is a robust debate about issues. We need a robust debate about things like, the IPRA. We need a robust debate about things like TIF funds. We need a robust debate about the budget, and we are just not getting that. And
sure.
That's one thing that, as a lawyer for 25 years, I think I can bring to the table that has not been brought to the table.
But you know what?
Far.
Many times people they run against the incumbent, and then once they get in office, Bob, they become a rubber stamp, just like the aldermen. They get comfortable. They get so used to being down there, calling the shots for the city. How can the people in the 29th Ward know that you won't get down to city council and get co-opted by the mayor?
You know, it's a matter of integrity, and it's a matter of someone's record. And for 25 years, I have been fighting the good fight for people, protecting their constitutional rights at the juvenile courthouse at 26th in California. And those are the kinds of things that, are often very unpopular.
Sure. When
you're representing somebody who's charged with killing a police officer in the line of duty, that's not a popular thing to do. That's not just a go with the flow. And so therefore, I have a track record of being independent. I went and filed and challenged Senator Don Harmon in
Sure.
the 39th Legislative District. Don Harmon's the president pro tem, but he had done and backed a couple of pieces of legislation that I was particularly opposed to, Senate Bill 1 being one of them. And that's why, as a lifelong Democrat, probably not the best thing to do, take on somebody like Don Harmon, but I did do that, and that shows how independent I am.
Have you heard of the Progressive Seven that's in the city council?
Yes, I have.
What do you think of them guys? Are these guys troublemakers or what? They don't vote with the mayor.
Yeah, I think that number 7 should get bigger.
All right. Will we have the Progressive 8 if you're elected?
The progressive is a label, and a lot of people like to cloak themselves with that label, progressive, but it's somebody's
I don't
record.
think you'll ever get hurt being called a progressive in the 29th Ward. You got another caller. Caller, come on, talk to me. Welcome to All Hands.
Hello?
Yes, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, both you gentlemen?
Doing well.
I have two things to say.
What's your name?
My name is Bonnie Poole. I'm
Thank
a
you.
grandma. I'm 73 years old.
All right.
Everybody votes in my house. This is the way I was raised. I've been voting since I was 18.
Sure.
It's very important that people realize that it's important to vote.
Absolutely.
I think
Amen.
that there should be a limit to how long an alderman, just like 4 years or 8 years, that's it. I wondered why this can go from the federal government, the state, and the city. When these people are elected, they need to have audits of all these offices to find out what money came in and where it went out. Number two, politicians, you don't hear anything from these aldermen until it's time for election.
Absolutely.
People will say anything to get elected. You have a lot of people that they talk about the jobs that they bring to the certain areas. But they never say, and this is even the federal government, these are minimum wage jobs. I'm going to get off the phone and listen to the young man answer it.
What's your question, Bonnie?
The question is, why is it don't all these offices be audited?
Gotcha. Thank you.
A smart person would audit an office to see what funds came in, what went out.
Got you loud and clear.
I would like to know why there isn't a term limit
Thank
on
you.
all of these people. And aldermen say anything to get elected. And like you said just a few minutes ago, you say one thing, when you get in office, you do another.
All right, we
Tell
got it.
people to vote.
We
And
got it.
People will.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, well, there are two different questions there, I think.
Let's deal with the term limits. What do you feel about term limits?
You know, term limits was something that was, there was an attempt to put it on the ballot. I think Bruce Rauner was behind that amendment, and the way it played out, that never made it. There were a couple of other amendments that wound up being proposed and then passed, the Crime Victims Amendment and the Millionaire Amendment in the November election. With respect to term limits, you know, it has very attractive features to have a term limit.
Sure.
But, you know, the people need to decide, and that should be on the ballot.
Okay. And make a comment
and
about politicians saying anything to be elected.
Well,
And you know that's true.
Well,
Oh,
you know,
God.
that's why when that happens, the politician should only be there for one term.
Sure.
That people need to come out and vote, you know, not just once and then be
If you're sick of that, the way you do it is you show up and vote, and also in addition to that, work for a campaign that you believe in. We got another caller. Caller, welcome to the show.
I'd like to know how you feel about, it's been floating around for a while, and I just want to see where you stand on it. A city income tax on people's personal wages, and about property taxes.
Well,
Thank you.
obviously, nobody wants to be taxed, and everybody feels that they'd be taxed enough. The property tax, there's a huge, you know, our state has a real problem with property tax because that's the way we fund our school system.
Gotcha.
And so there needs to be some sort of structural change on how we do that.
All right.
On the other hand, you know, when it comes to a city income tax, that's obviously something that can be done. But, you know, will that take jobs away from the city, and will people want to go live in the suburb if there's a city income tax? These are all ideas that need to be put on the table. They need to be debated, and then people need to vote on them.
Debated between who? Among who?
The city council. The
Okay.
city council.
The city council debating. They're
Well-
going to do whatever the mayor said. That's. Come on. What do
That's
you
why
mean
this
by that?
election is so important.
Okay.
Pastor
And
Acree.
to make this citywide, there are a lot of wards where the mayor's rubber stamp aldermen are being challenged. What do you think of that? What is that saying?
Well, that's saying that the electorate out there, the voters out there, are dissatisfied with the way things are going, and there's a real movement that's building to change things in City Hall, and they're very upset about the way the direction the city's going in.
Sure thing. Caller, welcome to the show. Next line. All right. They got tired of waiting. Caller, feel free to call back. Listen, let me ask you, what plan do you have for urban renewal?
You know, urban renewal in the 60s and 70s was sometimes called poor removal, and so I don't believe in that.
You don't believe in urban renewal?
I don't believe in poor removal. I don't believe in trying to gentrify the area so that the folks who can't afford to live there anymore because everything's expensive have to move out and go somewhere else. That's not urban renewal. Urban renewal is bringing...
That's why we want to hear your plan for it.
Yeah, well, you know, we've got a lot of industry that has left the community. I talk a lot about the Zenith plant. My mother used to work at the Zenith plant. She worked on that Zenith assembly line.
Sure.
And as you know, a lot of people who lived in Austin worked at Zenith. Now that factory is basically empty, and it can be repurposed into some other new light manufacturing, maybe small offices for small businesses to come in. We need to go out and try to market that facility. We need to try to bring more jobs into the community, and we need to come up with ways to incentivize hiring from the community for those locations. So there's of course the Frederick Cooper lamp factory, which is between Central and Austin, also basically along the Bloomingdale Railroad tracks. And then there's a lot of vacant space on Roosevelt Road as well.
Sure.
So, we're lucky and fortunate to have the industry that we have, but we need to try to fill out the stuff that's vacant and bring more jobs back, because that's the most, I think that's one of the most pressing issues facing the 29th Ward.
What do you think about a business district? Have you heard any talk in the community about a business district being on Chicago Avenue?
Yes.
African-American cultural enclave or something? Like in this city you have
Bronzeville.
Bronzeville. You have Little Italy.
Sure, you have Chinatown.
There you go.
You have Koreatown. You've got Devon with a large Indian community, which used to be a Jewish community. Well, on Devon.
And then Lithuanian Village.
Sure.
So what do you think about that? Because there's not a place that's Afrocentric where there's a lot of businesses and a lot of cultural things being displayed.
Right, well, that's an excellent idea. It would be nice to promote an area of the 29th Ward where we can have businesses that are Afrocentric, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely.
Sure, absolutely. I've heard about this plan. I'm not that familiar with it, but, I encourage a plan like that.
Sure. Now, let me ask you this. Callers, feel free to call in at 312-738-1060. We have the gentleman who received today the endorsement of the Chicago Sun-Times over the current alderman, Deborah Graham. They even went as far to say that she's fighting for political life. And then they made another comment about Chris Taliaferro as another gentleman who shows some promise in the race. How much weight do you give to the Sun-Times endorsement? What does that really mean?
I'm flattered to be endorsed by the Sun-Times. Does it mean anything? I don't think I'd be sitting in this chair. I don't think you would have invited me had I not been endorsed by the Chicago Sun-Times. So for me to poo-poo that would be ridiculous.
Sure.
But, this is all about the voters out there and who they go out and vote for. And if the Sun-Times editorial board's decision to endorse me helps you make that decision, then it's all good.
How do you feel about the mayor closing 50 schools?
Well, that was obviously a very traumatic event for the city of Chicago, because not only did it wind up causing a lot of people to lose their jobs, it wound up creating a lot of problems with children who would have to travel large distances to go to other schools.
Sure.
Now, there was a recent study, and I think the Chicago Tribune reported about how some of these children actually wound up going to better schools and doing better. But that was not for all of the children. A lot of them fell through the cracks, too. Some wound up staying at schools that were closer to their house, but they weren't very good schools. Mm-hmm. My vision is for a school system that not only has fully funded schools, but one where people can send their children to neighborhood schools and be very confident that their children are going to receive the kind of education where they can, achieve in life and learn the skills, obtain the skills, so they can have high-paying, well-paying jobs. Not working at Subway, asking people if they want black olives on their ham sandwich. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we need some of these schools too. I think they have some trade centers in it. Trade schools.
College is not for everybody. My father, who is an electrician, he's retired. He's the first one to say that. It's reading the books and learning calculus ain't for everybody. And for those guys, we need to have trade schools. I went to Lane Tech. The whole first floor was shops. We had print shop, we had foundry, we had wood shop. Right. Nowadays the children there are no shops left there. So nobody understands how to use a bandsaw. Nobody knows how to use a lathe. Nobody knows that, how to pour molten metal into a form. Nobody knows what a litho offset press is.
Yes.
People don't understand these things anymore. And, believe it or not, some of these industries are returning to America. They
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. What grade would you give Rahm Emanuel?
Well, I've been asked this question before, and the grade hasn't changed. I would give him a D.
A D?
Yes. And, the main reason for giving him a D is because there's been, basically a lot of shenanigans with the budget. You can't borrow money from 2015 and put it in the 2014 budget and say, hey, everything's balanced. So it's shameful how we have kept kicking the can down the road for the last 4 years when we knew we were going to have these problems.
Funny part about it, though, you're giving him a D, but the more he runs these commercials, his grade seems to be rising among the electorate, though.
Well, that is unfortunately...
His approval rating has gone up.
I'll tell you, I don't know if I should call you pastor again or reverend.
That's fine.
But if I could call you that, Ira, what I would say is this. That's the problem with politics in America, is about money. It's about how much money goes into these political campaigns, and the only thing that people do with that money is buy TV commercials to make themselves viable. And people, instead of reading the Tribune editorial or the Sun-Times editorial or going and reading somebody's questionnaire, they get lulled into these 30-second commercials.
And what I've noticed, that many of these people that are voting, supporting Rahm, I lost my train of thought. let me finish this question up here.
Sure.
With Rahm Emanuel, what positive can you say about his competition?
Well, what positives can I say about his competition? Well,
each one.
I know Bob Fioretti has been giving him he's been giving him a run for his money for a long time. And that's unfortunate. And, like those 7 aldermen we talked about, that's partially why the 36th ward got split up and why Nick Spizzato had to go run in 38.
Right.
It's because he was giving Rahm Emanuel a tough time, just like Bob Fioretti was. Now, Bob Fioretti doesn't even live in the 2nd ward anymore.
Right.
So, I applaud him for challenging Rahm on some of these issues.
Challenging Rahm.
And bringing these issues up and putting them in his face. Okay.
What about
with respect to Chuy Garcia?
There we go.
My mother was a Chicago public school teacher. She's a retired Chicago public school teacher. I believe in the public schools. I sent my kids through public schools. I went through the public schools, as I told you, and I was very, very excited about Karen Lewis. I was very disheartened when she fell sick. I'm glad she's doing better now, but good for Chuy to be able to jump in and answer the call.
Yeah, very progressive.
So, yeah, and he's had, a very good record on a lot of issues that have affected the community. He's been very progressive on a lot of issues.
Washington protege.
Yes, one of the first political campaigns I ever worked on in college was Harold Washington's re-election campaign. Wow. And that was in the 47th ward, which wasn't exactly the most progressive ward in that sense. It's not the 47th ward of today.
Yeah, what about Willie Wilson?
Well, you have to respect a man who can pull himself up from the bootstraps, come from a very, very poor rural area, and rise to what he has achieved now in life as a successful businessman, not only with his medical equipment business, but and actually having the gumption to go up to Ray Kroc and say, hey, you know what? If you give me a McDonald's, I'll run it and I'll make it a successful business.
And let me tell you what I said today on Facebook, because a lot of people were teasing him about the comments he made. And here it is. For all the people who have berated and belittled the multimillionaire businessman, Willie Wilson, for his poor speaking ability and claim not to be able to understand the words that he says, my response is this. There's one person running, and we understand every word that he says loud and clear. And that's Rahm Emanuel. He said, I have closed 50 schools on the south and west side, primarily in black and brown neighborhoods. I fired more than 5,000 workers as a result of CPS closings. I've expanded the red light and speed camera traps in your neighborhoods, and I placed none downtown. I've closed half the city's mental facilities. Chicago became the murder capital of America under my watch. I'm the mayor who has refused to bring racial diversity to the Chicago Police Department. So after 4 years of this debacle, we can all agree that we never misunderstood anything he said, nor where he's coming from. Rahm Emanuel, we hear you loud and clear, and I hope everybody else does. Thank you so much. We've had a great time. Congratulations on the endorsement.
Thank you. Thanks, Pastor.
And we'll see you next week.
Vote for Bob.
All right, on All Hands on Deck. Have a blessed one.